In today's video, I have my rookie guide for Supercoach 2022. So I have each player's name listed, their price under 210k we're doing. Also I have their job security, high, low, moderate, and whatnot, and then whether I would field them or bench them. So starting off in defense, so we have Mitch Hinge at 181k. I believe his job security is moderate to high, and he's one you can field or bench. Obviously, he's not training this week, the leading up to round 1, so keep an eye on that. He might not play round 1 because of his shoulder or AC joint, something like that. So a little injury risk if you want to take it, but at his best, I'm confident he's best 22 at the Crows, and he will score okay in a wing or a halfback role. Probably better off halfback, but I think for now he seems to be playing wing. The next player, Josh Gibcus, 171k. I have his job security is moderate. I think they have a few other key defenders they could play, but especially I believe Grimes might be missing round 1. Not too sure. So is it a straight swap? Not too sure. I think though they will persist with him. They really like him, it seems, and he had a really strong time on ground in the Amy series. So I think he's best 22 to be honest. So I have it at moderate, and definitely not one I'd field because he's a key position player in his first year. Bench, or ideally just avoid him entirely, depending on the rookie supply we get. The next one we have is Paddy McCartan, 158k. Defender forward, but I think we're going to need him down back. I think his job security is really good, so I've listed it as high. I think maybe Sam Reid might be the backup there. And yeah, had a really strong showing, showed intercepting capabilities. I think you could field him or bench him. There's going to be some down games because he's key position, but given the fact he can intercept and take some contested marks, I think that might spike his score a little bit. So field or bench, probably ideally bench, but beggars can't really be choosers this year. The next one is Josh Sin, similar price, 158k. Have his job security as moderate. It all depends if he's named round 1. It seems like maybe it's 50-50 at this point. Not exactly sure, but I believe he was training with the A team with a week to go to round 1. So that's a great sign. So have him at moderate job security just because I don't know if he'll be named round 1, and then have him as a bench. You could field him. I think that there's a lot of really strong on-field options across all lines, maybe except for maybe the defense. So depending on how deep you go on defense, you might have to, or how shallow you go, you might have to field him. But I feel much more comfortable with him on the bench. I think maybe a 55 to 60 average is probably realistic for him. So if he's named, I think you definitely pick him, and yeah, go from there because Ken loves to play the kids. So it has had a good preseason. Next we have Brady Kemp, 157k. Have his job security is moderate to low. Before he did his calf issue, sounded like he was best 22, but his role was a bit uncertain. His role when he played before he did his calf was filling in for Curnow up forward, or Harry Mackay, one of the two he was filling in for. I think actually it would have been Mackay, I think. So he's trained down back all preseason, but I don't know if there's room down back, especially with Doherty to come back in. So I'm not sure if Doherty is wing or halfback, so I can't answer that. But yeah, I think he's one I'd avoid. I think the durability of him is very, very poor as well, which doesn't help. And leading up a calf issue leading into round 1 is a little dangerous. So definitely a bench or avoid. I'm leaning towards avoid at this stage. So just a bit of uncertainty, and I think Carlton will be really strong 22 this year. So it might be a little hard to maintain his spot, but yeah. So the next one is Sam DeConing, 124k. Have his job security as moderate. It's probably a bit higher than this, but with DeConing, I think they have a few tools that can come in at the Cats. So I think they'd be pretty silly not to play him. He had a good showing in the Amy series. Josh Jenkins spoke very highly on him and said he's basically a lock. So maybe moderates. Maybe this should be moderate to high, but just not 100% sure. Maybe depending on matchups, they play different defenders. So yeah, I think they needed to play. So, and he's a bench only for mine. So I think we're all going to pick him on the bench at F8 most likely, and hopefully he showed a decent ceiling, even though I'd probably project him as like a 45 average, maybe 50 if he's lucky. So see how he goes. But yeah, one I'm comfortable picking on the bench because he should play. The next one is Boyd from Carlton, have 124k, job security low, and I have him as an avoid. I think he played okay in the second half of his Amy game. his first practice game in the first half of his Amy game, he made a hell of a lot of clangers, and that means if that continues into the regular season, if he plays, he's probably the first one to go out of that team. With Doherty coming back, it's very hard to see him being named round 1. It's possible, but I think his job security is going to be very on the edge, and his role lockdown defender is not super great either. So he's one I'd avoid. And then Will Kelly, 124k. His job security is low. Very much depends on injuries, and I think he's trained up forward, but he might be required down back. So I think he's a chance at round 1, but his scoring power and durability is pretty atrocious. This is one I'd definitely avoid. So we'll move on to the midfield. And we'll start off with Jason Horne-Francis, 208k. So job security, very high. I know Noble hasn't guaranteed his job security, but it'd be preposterous, I think, if he didn't play as many games as he could. And I think you feel very comfortable fielding him. Given his role, it might not be the best score at times, but he's very good contested game. He'll get a little bit of stints in the middle. He's already one of their best players, I think. So happy to field him. Next is Nick Dacos, 194k. Lucky the Giants didn't bid, because we definitely needed that little bit less money, that cheaper price for Dacos. So I have his job security very high. He's probably in their top 5, possibly even 3 best players at Collingwood already. Very comfortable fielding him, and we can hold him to the buys. Most likely that will happen. So definitely want to pick Dacos. Josh Ward, 180k. I have his job security as high, just because they have Mitchell and O'Meara to come back in. This probably should be very high, because it'd be pretty silly not to play him every game he can. But just because they got a few more coming in, you never know, and he might get pushed out into a wing more, which if he doesn't perform there might be a little bit of doubt there, but I'm just being very overly cautious there. But I feel very, very confident picking Ward. I would chuck him on your field at F8 and be happy with that. Next I have Dylan Stephens, 168k. I have his job security as moderate to high. He's given himself every chance he can, every chance to play in round 1. And yeah, had a great preseason. So performed okay in the Amy series. Probably more outside with small stints on the inside. You could probably field him, but I think we just have such strong players from the draft. I think he's going to be pushed to M9 for a lot of people. So you could bench or field. But yeah, given the strength of this year, probably leaning towards bench. But yeah, might be an okay scorer. Scored very well in the VFL. The next player, 124k, is Cooper Stevens. I have his job security as moderate to low and field or bench. So really strong contested ball winner. One I'd be okay fielding, and had a good showing in the Amy game. Geelong rookies, well, who knows? Especially with Duncan, he could miss round 1 and play round 2. And then does that mean Cooper Stevens doesn't play? So I'm not even sure he gets named round 1, but honestly, I don't trust Chris Scott with rookies at all. So, you know, even if he is good enough, do they keep playing him? So they like to play the older guys for whatever reason. So very frustrating. But I think the CEO said a few days ago that they want to inject more youth into the team. So that is an encouraging sign. So if Cooper Stevens is picked round 1, I think I will pick him. But I really hope that he's an upgrade target for us, because I just can't stand Chris Scott. Or I can't trust Chris Scott with his young players. So yeah, he will be a much better option than these 117k guys, I think. So one to monitor if he gets named round 1. Next I have Jackson Mead. I have his job security is low. Don't think he did enough in the Amy series, to be honest, and bench or avoid. So yeah, I thought he was okay. Didn't do anything special in the Amy series. And Sam Palpepper played really well. I'm not sure if Sam Pepper SPP plays round 1, but I think he's ahead of Mead for a mid spot. So yeah, I think I would avoid Mead, I think, at this stage. So, but yeah, only seen a little bit of him. So he's at that age where he could come good, but I feel very nervous picking Mead. So the next I have is Connor McDonald. I have his job security. He's 117k, job security moderate to low, and a bench option if we get him. There was a quote the other day, something about, they said Connor McDonald will play throughout the year. I don't know if that means round 1 or not, but it would have been nice if we heard that he'll play round 1, but still a few days to go. So I don't know if he's playing round 1. He's had a good preseason, but again, they have a few mids to come back and just a few other players as well. So not 100% sure on Connor McDonald. If he's named round 1, I'll happily pick him at at M11, but otherwise, I guess you can't pick him. So pick if named, I think. But yeah, his job security might be on the edge and he might be in and out of the team. So fingers crossed, but his NAB League numbers were really good, and I think he showed some good signs in the preseason. Next player we have is Soligo, 117k for the Crows. Have his job security moderate to low and a bench or avoid. So one I'd probably go without, but the Crows have a few injuries. I think Miller probably starts in the SNFL. Hinge is in doubt for round 1. Dawson's in doubt for round 1. So the problem is if these guys miss round 1, they probably get back into the team early, and Soligo might be the one in the firing line. So that does make me a little bit nervous, but I think Nix has shown that he gives the kids a bit of a run, which is an encouraging sign. Soligo's junior numbers were really good, but he might get shafted to a half-forward role. And maybe early, with all the injuries, he can play a bit on a wing. So I think one I'd be, if I am backed into a corner and I have to pick one of these 117k guys, and McDonald's named as well, I think the second one, probably Soligo, just because I feel like I have a reasonable read on it. But yeah, with a few players to come back in, I'm not too sure, but just purely because Nix really rates him, the Crows re-signed him, and they want to put some. I think they want to put some games into him because he's had a good preseason and talked up by a few teammates. So it will be a slow burn, but yeah, we'll see what other options we get. So I think he's at the moment leading the way for the 117 guys outside of McDonald, but we'll see. We need to hear a bit more positive things on the other players. So Hoff from West Coast, 117k, have his job security moderate to low. I know Witherden, I think he's suspended round 1 from memory. So if he comes back in, does that mean Hoff goes out? And I have him bench or avoid, so probably the least physically ready of these guys. But it seems to have a good role off half back, but it's low contested game. Probably more suited to AFL fantasy, this pick. So I think he's probably more likely to hold his spot than Soligo. I'm not too sure. So one to monitor, see if the club says anything about him, but I know they have, with Witherden coming back, I'm not exactly sure. So then Owens from St Kilda, 117k, have his job security as low and bench or avoid. You know, does Zach Jones come in from his, I think he's on a mental health break, something like that. So as soon as Jones come in, does Owens go out? It's possible. They have a few other injuries as well. I think Billings might be injured at the moment. Don't know if he's in line for round 1. And St Kilda, probably another team that can't really be trusted too much with rookies. So I think he's one I probably avoid because his job security is probably the worst, but he looks like the most physically ready. So see how that goes. So I have him as bench or avoid, but I think he seems like he can score okay. But yeah, another one. These guys are I'm having a really tough time getting a read on them. Because I think a lot of their job security might be linked to injuries in their team. So we'll move on to the forward line. So at 208k, the first forward I have is Cherry. I have his job security as high, and I have him as a field option. So one I feel very comfortable picking. It seems all signs point towards him being the number 1 ruck at North Melbourne. David Noble was on radio the other day saying that Goldstein will help them up forward. It will help take, Zerha and Larkey can take the second and third defenders potentially and see how that goes. So given how good of his, he's shown good scoring in the VFL and in previous preseason games, and he's been, I think, the number 1 ruck in match sim, and like Goldie's played on the seconds team at times. So all signs point towards him being the number 1 ruck at North Melbourne. So I have it as high. It could be lower. I don't think CCJ's a threat to him at all, but my read on it is he's done everything. Everything's aligned for him to be the first ruck and share with Goldie. But yeah, probably get a bit more time in the ruck than Goldie. The next player, Hugo Ralsmith, 207k. Have his job security at moderate and a field or bench option. The problem with Ralsmith is he's played really well off halfback, impressed in the preseason, and I think he's best 22. The issue is Rioli, Vlosten and Short probably ahead of him at this stage for halfback, so that might push him to a wing or half forward. And that's not where he played. That's not where he can play his best footy right now, I think. So, yeah, it's a tough one. But given other options have popped up, I think I probably won't be picking Hugo Ralsmith. But I think if he does get a bit of halfback time, I think he'll be really good because he's definitely improved over the preseason and he's a good player. So given other options, probably pick somebody else, but I think he's still a reasonable option. So next is Naish at 190k for West Coast. Just recently signed. Have his job security is moderate to low. He's just got signed, but he showed some signs. And given West Coast injuries, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays round 1. Given he's only been there 1 or 2 weeks, it's not the best look having someone sign that he's a lot of these SPP players have been training all preseason with their clubs, whereas Naish has just rocked up there. So maybe he needs to get his head around the game plan and stuff like that. It would seem a bit strange to play him early, but if he does, he's shown scoring power in the past. Good at VFL, but yeah, just couldn't quite make it at AFL level. So I have him. You could field him or bench him. So yeah, just given he just got signed, it's very hard to read his job security. So I probably can't answer that for you. So the next player is Josh Rochelle, 184k. Job security is very high. Already probably in the top 5 Crows players. Was their best player over the preseason games, and a field or bench. I think you can definitely field him, but given he seems to be playing high half forward for what is a rebuilding team, if the goals don't come, the scoring won't come most likely. So yeah, one I feel comfortable fielding, but one that I guess you could pay up for him on the bench. I don't mind that either. So Corey Durden, 144k, have his job security to moderate to high. I definitely think he's best 22. I think he's definitely played himself into it. Motlop's probably not ready yet, so I think they have Owens as well up there. So I have him as a bench option. So one I feel comfortable picking on the bench. I don't think he's a must-have, but he's a nice luxury to have. So we'll make a bit of money. I think there will be a game or 2 there where he kicks three goals or something like that. And he's shown an ability to accumulate up the ground, which he hasn't really shown in previous years. So that's an encouraging sign. So yeah, I guess don't really know what you're going to get from Durden in terms of scoring. Might be up and down. Rather bench him and know that I'm pretty confident that he'll get an extended run at it. The next one is Finn McGuinness. I have him at low and would be a bench only option. So I'm not sure what his role is. He could do some tagging in the midfield. They did put him at halfback, but I think that was to cover Bramble potentially. So I don't know what's going on with Finn McGuinness, and he seems like a sub candidate to me. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with him, and a few injured, Mitchell and Amira to come back in for Hawthorn. He could be one to go out. So I don't feel comfortable picking Finn McGuinness, but given he's been in the system a few years, been really good. Teammates spoke pretty highly about him at training over the preseason, so I guess one you could pick. My read on it isn't very good, and I'm not sure he's best 22. I don't think he was super impressive in the practice game, so for me, bench avoid at this stage. So next one is Kane Baldwin from Essendon, so 124k. So it looks like Harry Jones is out for a month, so I think his job is almost guaranteed for at least a month. So I put his job security as moderate just because past 4 weeks, does Harry Jones just come in and take his spot? I imagine that's the case. So I guess it depends on when Harry Jones is fully fit. So one that you could bench, key forward, but high talent. So could make a bit of money, I think. It looked okay in the preseason games. So one I would strictly bench only. Probably would rather Durden, just because he has a bit more long-term job security, I'd imagine. But if you needed the money, you could need to go a bit down to Baldwin. I guess that's okay, but yeah, I would rather probably Durden at this stage. So McEntee from Port, 124k, have his job security as moderate to low. It's probably even lower than that, to be honest, but have him as bench or avoid. So they have Motlop, Rosie, and somebody else up there. I can't remember who. For Port Adelaide, they probably play the 3 tools as well. Oh, Robbie Gray, I'm forgetting. I'm not sure Robbie is playing round 1. If he isn't, maybe that opens the door for McEntee. But otherwise, he feels like a sub candidate, your 22, 23, 24, 25th sort of player range. So I feel like his job security is on edge. Played okay in the Amy series. So yeah, I think there are other players with stronger job security, so I'd probably look elsewhere, but he might end up being an okay rookie. So probably not one I'm looking at, but could be okay. And then Nick Martin, 102k. So I have him as moderate to low job security just because it's hard to get a read on this one, because from what I've been reading from Essendon fans on Twitter, he might take Nick Cox's spot. and he's probably ahead of Alec Waterman as well, so probably at half forward. Played really, really well. I watched him in the practice games, or before the practice and aiming game in the intra club, and I was really, really impressed with him. I thought he was one of the best players on the ground, and he's done everything right. And he's one you could field because he can accumulate around the ground. He can push up pretty high. So I do like Nick Martin, and if he's named round 1, I'd absolutely 100% lock him in at F8. You could even field him. I'd be okay with fielding him. So definitely one I'd pick, but yeah, it would be performance based, I'd imagine, given the Bombers do have a pretty strong best 22. So at this stage, we're hoping he's named round 1, and if he is, I think I'd be happy to pick him. And in the ruck, we just have the 2. So Sam Hayes have his job security as moderate and a bench option. I guess it's linked to Paddy Ryder, and given Paddy Ryder's durability, I just assume Hayes will be in and out the team. So I think he's our loop / slow cash burn or cash generator at R3. So that's where I'll put him. I wouldn't want to captain him if he's emergency. Just be very careful of that. But even if he's not named, I feel okay picking him because I'm pretty confident that he'll get games throughout the year. So played a forward ruck role. Doesn't seem too capable in the ruck at this level, but a good forward. So yeah, works really hard, and I think he's one player I'd want on my team. I'd lock him in for sure if he's in round 1, and even if he's not, I think he'll get games eventually. And then the other one is Hugh Dixon, 102k. Have his job security as low and a bench or avoid option. So seems okay. Seems to have worked really hard to get back onto an AFL list, but he's a key forward for West Coast. So the issue with this is they have Kennedy and Darling back. Assume Darling plays round 1 now that his vaccine drama seems to be put behind him. Not 100% sure, but I imagine he's been training away from the club. So probably, I'd imagine Kennedy, Darling play. Maybe they play Bailey Williams as a backup for Nick Nat. I'm not sure. I don't think he's the future though. And then I think Oscar Allen's probably a while away from memory. So it depends how many tools they want to run. And I think Jake Waterman as well was injured. So maybe he's fighting for a spot with Waterman. It just seems a little bit dicey for my liking. So, but he did what he could in the Amy game. I thought he was one of their better players, and unfortunately, he's not going to get a whole lot of supply. So I'm thinking an average maximum 50, unfortunately. Maybe in a better club, he could push a bit more than that. So no, don't feel super comfortable picking him anymore, but I would have felt okay picking him if Jack Darling was out for a bit longer. So that's my rookie guide. Let me know if I've missed anyone in the comments. I'll try and comment on them. Again, I don't know what the clubs are thinking. This is just my read on these players from my research. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.